Hi everyone, my name is Leslie and I'm going to be doing a presentation on Dorothy Draper. So to start with an overview, Dorothy Draper started America's first interior design firm. Later we'll be talking about some of her most notable projects, which are the Hampshire House Hotel in New York, the Green Brier Resort in West Virginia, and the Arrowhead Spring Resorts in California. When talking about Dorothy Draper, it's really important to talk about her upbringing. She actually grew up in Tuxedo Park, New York, which is a really wealthy and elite neighborhood. It's actually a gated community. The picture at the right is not of her house or anything. It's just something that I found when researching that's from that area. And she was raised kind of among this WASP style, and WASP is white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. I'm not sure how much the term is used today or if it's really politically correct, but it's just kind of at the time was people who were able to trace their heritage kind of back to Europe and kind of composed this, what was considered the most like elite and wealthy and influential people of America. So her social credentials kind of what enticed her clients. They knew her status and, you know, they wanted their foot in the door as well. And so she was kind of a stepping stone for a lot of people. And just kind of more on her. Her husband actually was FDR's personal physician. They were childhood friends, and then whenever he contracted polio, he became his personal physician. So she definitely kind of was involved with, you know, she came from a lot of big name people, like her roots and her ancestors, and then also obviously with kind of the community she grew up in, kind of mingled with those people as well. It's also important to kind of talk about the rise of the interior designer and kind of the terminology. So at the time, you know, it was really just considered decorating, and then over the years it's definitely evolved now to design, and there's formal education, things like that. But at the beginning of the 20th century, they just used interior decorator, and then kind of transitioned to design when Elsie de Wolfe got her first design commission and published her book on interior design, which was like the first book that discussed it. And then Dorothy Draper, the person who I'm talking about, she was the first commercial interior decorator, and then she actually established the very first interior design firm in the United States. So actually her first project was her own home, and she owned a brownstone in New York City. So I put a picture to the right that you can see that they're kind of notoriously a little bit dreary, and as you can imagine, you know, they're stacked next to each other, so not a lot of light, things like that. And that's what she loved, is light and color. And so she kind of expanded her ground floor and made room for tons and tons of people, like party guests. And that really sparked the interest of a lot of her neighbors and friends, you know, and they wanted her to do kind of the same thing for them. And so she capitalized on that. She realized she could, you know, create a company or, you know, make a living off of this, which is kind of unheard of for women of her status and definitely like that time to be a career woman. So she did in fact establish the Architectural Clearinghouse, is what it was called. And it kind of worked with these, you know, societal women who wanted to kind of have a similar house to her, light color, you know, good design, and match them with architects to kind of bring whatever their vision was, or more of Dorothy's vision, to light. So she started off doing private residential design and then kind of moved away from that because even though she loved, you know, bold color and pattern and light, not necessarily all of her clients wanted to go as bold as she did. And so she kind of got tired of having to cater to private design, you know, exactly what they wanted, and kind of shot for something bigger where she had more control, and that ended up being resorts and hotels. So the first commission that she got was for the Carlisle Hotel, and so this is a picture to the right. And one of her things that's not featured in this photo, but she loved black and white marble floors, which we'll see more of kind of as we go throughout. Mirrors, chandeliers, columns, classical busts, things like that, and then satin and velvet. She just loved color and pattern and kind of taking classical architectural features and just like, you know, bringing them up times 1,000. So then she got commissioned actually for these kind of block of tenements that were in Manhattan, and the owners were kind of struggling to even rent these out for $15 a month. And so she came in, she painted the exterior black, with like white trim to kind of contrast, and then all the doors were primary colors, and then, you know, kind of did her signature in the inside with really fun patterned wallpaper and carpets, things like that. And then the owners were actually able to rent them out for quadruple that amount. They were filled up, they had plenty of customers. And she actually lived there for a brief amount of time as well, but just totally turned around the design and turned around the hotel in terms of business as well. So around the time of the Great Depression, Dorothy's husband left her for another woman. So she was left by her husband, the market crashed, and so she just felt like her name, the Architectural Clearinghouse, was a little bit too dreary, and so she went for something a bit more front-facing, and so Dorothy Draper Incorporated was born, and then more projects that we'll talk about here in the coming slides ensued that were mostly hotels and resorts. So one of those projects was the Hampshire House Hotel, and this was another hotel that was kind of struggling for business. So she created this like all-encompassing design scheme. Everything from the carpets to like the matchbook covers to the uniforms that the staff wore. And so it truly became a legacy of Tuxedo Park, which again is that community that she grew up in. So they could walk in, they knew exactly where they were, just kind of her stamp kind of was all over it. So again, just kind of this all-encompassing design that they knew was her with like patterned, light, bold color, this kind of modern Baroque kind of style that she coined. So this was a really big project for her. This is another view of the Hampshire House Hotel, and you can kind of see this is that wonderful example of the marble floors that she loved, the white and black pattern. That comes up a lot in her design, so that was kind of a staple for her. But again, just like really fun pattern, like classical furniture that, has some kind of interesting twist to it. So this is like very classic Dorothy Draper. And then this is another view of the Hampshire House Hotel. Like I said, classic furniture, there's those floors, busts, things like that. Really dramatic, really, really fun. So next is a really important project, the Greenbrae Resort in West Virginia. So around that time, resorts like these were really popular. This is kind of where, rich people went to go relax. If, you didn't want to upkeep like another home somewhere else, you can go to a resort, get some rest and relaxation that way. And this is kind of what would become one of the largest redecorating projects for a hotel that the country had ever seen. So again, tons and tons of awesome wallpaper, lots of pattern. Her floors are there, as you can see, just really kind of open the whole place up. And actually you can still purchase any of like the furniture that you see in the lobby, and wallpaper, things like that. They have a store in the resort still today. So anything that you see, you can buy, and still kind of the two are kind of intertwined, the resort and Dorothy Draper. So this is like another view, again, tons of pattern, the floors, bright walls. This was kind of what you called like a Monticello blue. And then, she has a picture of George Washington. There's a lot of kind of Americana almost, like portraits and things like that and murals that we'll see. And it's because actually this was, I think they used it as a army hospital during one of the wars, and so she kind of tied that in as well. But she loved big floral arrangements. Again, all the floral patterns you can see, so lots of pattern, lots of light, again, lots of very like classic architecture as well. And then again, you can see like very classic furniture, really interesting carpet choice, bright walls, things like that. So she loved green and red together, so green floor, red furniture. So yeah, very classic, but with her own very bright twist on it. And then another thing kind of again to point out more about like red and green together, and then this mural kind of to the right, and the kind of upper left as well. So again, a lot of like very Revolutionary War kind of motifs everywhere, which is really interesting. So next is the Arrowhead Springs Resort, which a lot of celebrities went to go, and same kind of thing, rest, relax. And so when she envisioned California, she envisioned crisp and clear. Like she was very surprised of maybe the lack of color that people chose for like their homes. And she was kind of quoted as saying like, oh, like when I picture California, I picture crisp, clear. Like I'm kind of, surprised by y'all's lack of the utilization of color. And so she really kind of put that in to her design here. All these photos are in black and white, so it's kind of hard to see. But still lots of color, lots of pattern, kind of no different than her usual choices kind of for the other resorts. She also ended up creating a book called Decorating is Fun. So it was a design manual and then also kind of a little bit of a self-help book. And so while it kind of gave some basic like design advice, it also kind of encouraged women to do what they wanted in terms of design for their home. They don't have to worry about what their mother-in-law thinks or, kind of what traditional design says. Her motto was, if it looks right, it is right. So that was kind of big for her. And also kind of being a single woman, that made her think like, not every woman has a husband around to hang curtains for her or whatever. And so she really encouraged them to go do it themselves. You know what I mean? You're very capable. You're fine. You don't need a man to handle it for you. So that was kind of big for her and feels a little bit ahead of her time. And then she also had a article in Good Housekeeping as well. So all in all, her style, again, was kind of, she coined this term modern Baroque, so really whimsical and interesting and out there. She loved, again, the splashes of color and pattern, things like that. If she used black and white, it was usually in those floors. That was kind of a good space for her. She felt like she wanted it there, but didn't really want it to be anywhere but underfoot. So just really interesting, really big bouquets and plaster work, things like that. And again, just all the light and color was super, super important to her. And then to close out, so when she aged kind of into her 50s, once she kind of had a design team, she stepped back a little bit in terms of being, so hands-on with the design, just let her employees kind of take control of different projects, but her, remained the face of the company. And then in 1960, she sold the firm to Carlton Varney, who has been the president now for 5 decades of that firm, and he actually has a book on her as well. And that is Dorothy Draper.